Welcome back to the Sign of Good Health podcast. Today we got a pretty cool one. We're talking with professional soccer player Dario Rodando. So, Dario, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, again, like Alex said, my name is Dario. I'm originally from Virginia, about 20 minutes south of DC. Been living in Minneapolis since 2019, so I'm still kind of fresh to the area. It was a journey. It was a lot of traveling, even before soccer, like as my childhood kind of went through. There was a bit of traveling, a lot of moving. Parents separated, so you know how that dynamic goes within family relationships. And so
let's start with a lot of kids growing up, they have the dream of being a pro soccer player. So for you, was there a point somewhere, and it could be like high school or whatever, where you're kind of seeing, or someone told you you were like really good and had the potential to go pro?
The point that I knew was when I moved to Florida, and I moved to Florida from Virginia to Florida just before 8th grade. And the reason why that time was really significant was because in Virginia, I was playing, I was good, I was kind of just like naturally the best player, but I didn't have nobody was telling me like the bar, where's the bar? I was just kind of like playing and it was good and whatever. When I got to Florida, my mom did a bunch of research. My dad did a bunch of research for my progression. And they chose this team because the coach used to play for the U.S. men's national team. His name is Coach Para. And so I tried out, which was my first time ever trying out for a team. And I did well enough, but the level was something that I've never seen before at that age. So it had nothing to do with like physical. It was like actual playing. It was the skills part of it that was took me by surprise. So I was able to join the team, which was good. I was good. I was in the mix, but I didn't excel. It was the first time I never excelled. And my coach would tell me like, hey, you need to do this. You need to do that. You need to do this. And then I remember my first game playing with the team I started, which was good. I only lasted 20 minutes because it was too hot. I wasn't fit enough. The speed of play was too fast. I was able to keep up, but only for 20 minutes. And so that move showed me a lot of different things. It showed me what level I needed to do. I needed to see what training I needed to do. I needed to get fitter. I needed to take it way more seriously in order to, up the game. So I'd say that transition from Virginia to Florida was like, that changed my trajectory of where I ended up.
Yeah, that's very cool that your parents helped you find a coach that knows what it takes to get to that high level and is also like directly telling you and helping you actually get there. That's really nice. So what position did you play?
I played center midfield, and that's what I ended up being when I was growing up in Virginia. I was a forward, tried to score goals. Just like every kid wants to score goals. So I was one of those.
Face the ball. Yeah.
Once I moved to Florida in the beginning, I wasn't a forward, but I was more of an attacker. So I was kind of like trying to score goals, but I was like creating and stuff like that. And then as I got older, not the scoring goals everybody's trying to score goals, but the priority of that became even less. Because based on my skill sets, because I was fit and the way I played the game, I was more of a controller of the game.
Right.
And still able to try to assist in that type of stuff. But that's where I excelled at, was being able to control the game.
Yeah. And especially like center midfields, they're going to have to, at least, and I played defense. So my job was to steal the ball from the fast guys, kick it up to the guys, and then you guys are in charge of that transition to set up offense and keep control of the ball as you're moving down the field to get a scoring kind of play or whatever you call it set up. So
yeah.
So when you say it's 20 minutes of game time, it's like that makes sense. Whereas I was on not a high level team in high school, and I was playing like the whole game pretty much, but it's also like not a high level play. So
you're right. Yeah.
Why do you think you did so well there?
As I said, when I did the move from Virginia to Florida, I kind of realized what I needed to get better at. I kind of turned those I guess I would use the word deficiencies. I kind of turned them into my strength. And so part of my skill set, like it was not a detriment that I was fit no longer. It was actually one of my strengths. I was always the fittest. I was able to dribble, and I'd be fast and quick and dribble. But as a key component at the highest level is your first touch and being able to think quickly and get rid of it quickly. And that's something that again, that was like kind of a deficiency, and I made that as like part of my strength. So it's kind of flip-flopped a little bit. Not that I lost the dribbling and what made me like kind of go through childhood, but the emphasis on kind of the next level and the trajectory of what I could do changed. And based on like my build and what I could do, the types of players that would be in my circle as an attacker and as a forward, especially in America, they value athleticism and they value strength and they value different attributes to where, I have that, but I don't have enough of that. And so kind of center midfield was kind of like, I was able to kind of blend my skills along with my physicality together.
Yeah, like I know for defense, it's like you kind of need positional awareness of like, okay, there's the guy with the ball, but where does he want to put the ball? And you need to also shuttle him to one side. And yeah, so, right. But then you also need your fellow defense to not be clueless. I had
that's right. Yeah.
My high school team was garbage. So
yeah. And that was part of it too. It felt like that was always the challenge. Because again, the strength, like as you're going through the developmental stages, like what a key part is the knowledge of it. Like you have to think about the game because everybody's fit, everybody's got the touch, everybody's got all of that stuff. But like, can you think quick enough to be able to whether it's do your job or impact the game? Yeah, I always felt that was a key part of what I had was I was able to think about it.
Yeah, especially with how much like midfielder guys run, like being able to think while you're fatigued, like that's not something everybody can do for sure. Yes, just for midfield is just, to me, it's just constant sprinting. It's like I couldn't do that.
Yeah, it was hard, man. It's hard.
It sounds like you started playing at, we'll just call it like a pro level mentality or wanting to step up starting around junior high age. So can you talk about the progression, like junior high school, college, making that journey?
So when I moved to Florida, as I kind of worked on my game, my trajectory like shot up actually. And so I lived in Florida for 3 years, but I did a lot of traveling within those 3 years because I kept getting invited to places. I flew back to Virginia and did a little camp, and I got chosen. Only 3 people got chosen out of a couple hundred kids, and I got chosen to one of them. So I spent a week in England training in Chelsea's facility, and then I spent a week in Italy playing with the people who else got chosen. So it was like not really like an opportunity, but more of like an experience.
Yeah.
And it was really great experience. I mean, I got to play against Italy teams and England teams and all of that. So I got invited to play for the men's national team of the age. And so I think I went and played for the U14 or U15s, maybe U16s men's national team. And I went to go and play. They flew me out to Atlanta, and that was a really good experience. Didn't do as well during that weekend as I would have hoped, but the situation, it's a really tough situation to be put in. So
yeah, because it sounds like you got instead of a team that knows how to work together, we're just going to take like 15 awesome high level kids and hope that they can mesh. So
for sure, to try out to see if they can handle it. And I also got played out of position. So, you have to, a lot of the journey is like, are you good enough? And kind of like, you kind of have to have some of the luck too.
And adaptable enough too. Cause like, I'm assuming there's some players that can do a few different roles and nobody's going to be able to do everything, but like you're saying, luck.
Yeah, for sure. So
I did have a ding dong coach that put me on offense, and it's like, I haven't played offense my whole life. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. and it's like too much thinking, like you don't know kind of what to do. And so as a kid, I I felt really lonely being in Florida, even though Florida was such a massive moment for my development as an athlete.
Mhm.
So I actually wanted to move back to Virginia.
Mm.
And around that time, the MLS team started to have a developmental academies. And so my dad ended up putting together a resume and gave it to DC United. And I was able to fly back to Virginia and do like a 2-week trial with the DC United Developmental Academy that had just started. And I made it.
Very
And so I finished out that Florida school year, and that was my ticket back. I went back and lived with my dad, who was still living in Virginia, and I started the U16s DC United, which was again a whole new experience. Even more higher level players, different style of play, different coaches, different expectations. It was a whole different game, which is a huge learning experience. It's really tough at the beginning for sure. But developed again, adjusted, adaptable, and made it work. And I played that for U16s. Then I jumped to U18s, and then I went to college. I went to a school called Radford University on a pretty big scholarship. If I had to do it again, I probably wouldn't have gone, but I thought that going to college was the next part of what was necessary in order to make it here in the States,
Mm.
to you go to school, enter the draft, and that type of stuff. And so I thought that was what I was supposed to do. So that's what I did. The school wasn't that big. It was a D1 school. So I did play against good schools. But the team that I was on wasn't the greatest of teams. We had good players, we competed, but it wasn't the level that I was used to or my expectation was.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had to grind through that until I was able to I finished in 3.5 years. I still had an internship to do, which I did, but I did it off campus. So I was able to finish my classes in 3.5 years. And during that semester, I was able to do my internship, and then I would go and train with DC United. Sometimes I would train with not the semi-pro team, but it's now the second division US team. I got invited to a couple of different combines. Usually like anybody can go to those combines, but based on my resume, sometimes I'd go to the combines for free, and I'd be able to speak to the coaches sometimes a little bit.
Can
Go
you
ahead.
elaborate on what a combine is for soccer? My frame of reference is just the NFL combine.
Sure. Yeah. So a combine is like, let's say a list of, I'm just going to throw an arbitrary number. Let's say 30 players.
Yeah.
And 30 players sign up, and that combine advertises what teams are going to be there in order to watch these set of 30 players play. And so they can be some Spain teams, there could be some other American teams from the first division, second division. It could be like a host of teams. Sometimes you have to be a little bit careful, because sometimes those teams kind of send like not really anybody serious.
Yeah.
Sometimes teams don't take that seriously. Yeah, but combines will have, if they have somebody going, they're able to put that on the display to attract guys to, it's a money thing too.
Yeah.
But
So,
sometimes some of them were really good sometimes, and I was able to kind of make some strides with it.
so from the player perspective, this is where the talent scouts or whatever you call them are going to be. So you have a shot to be noticed by a team.
Yep. And it makes it tough, because sometimes you could do really well, but maybe all of those teams aren't looking for players in your position.
Yeah. Are combines the main way that people get on pro teams for soccer?
No, I'd say it's a possibility,
Okay.
but it's not the main way. For the most part, I think America is catching up a little bit.
Mhm.
But for the most part, teams are like at age like 15, 16, they are throwing kids into the professional environment. And so they know if kids can play at that level at age 17, maybe 18, the latest. And
Mhm.
that's how professional teams are signing guys. They're signing guys at that age.
Interesting.
And so, yeah. And that's how most of the world does it. America kind of does it, but they have the college system, so they kind of incorporate that a little bit. So some guys in America go there later. They like are in the professional environment a little later, 21, 22. And so the development is kind of later,
Yeah.
you know.
That's interesting because, like, I don't know if you've read Moneyball, but the guy, I can't remember his name right now, but he talked about how a lot of other coaches would grab high school kids if they had like a 90 plus mile an hour fastball or whatever, but he would explicitly like never recruit a high school kid just because they're younger, and if you can get a college level player, there's development like as the skills, but also just kind of like maturity, like emotionally, and who you are as a person and whatever. So that's interesting that, but you're saying like the rest of the world does it that way too. So
yeah, I think the difference would be the actual sport. And so like with baseball, it is more maturity and more mechanics and that type of stuff. You know what I mean? Like you do need a level of that. And I'm not saying in soccer you don't need that, but as in between ages of 16 and 18, like there's ways around that. That's why you see in the sport of soccer, like you see short guys, you see tall guys, you see muscular guys, you see skinny guys. There's all kinds of different shapes, which means there's all kinds of different variables in order to play that game. There's also all kinds of different coaches with different eyes. You know, some guys want the bigger, stronger guys. Some guys want the smaller, more technical ball control guys. You know, like, so it's like it's multiple ways to play the game. You know, so like if a coach sees somebody at 17, you know, what attributes can they give to that team that they can mature over time? You know what I mean? So that by the age of, you know, not 17, but maybe 19, 20, you know, those 2-3 years playing in a professional environment, they can offer something, you know, and then you have that player for a decade. You know, you never know.
Yeah, that's really cool that they kind of, well, and maybe I'm just naive about the world of sports, but I think it's really cool that they're going in with that kind of developmental, let's set him up to grow in a few years and he can be an amazing player. Like, instead of just trying to only pick the superstars. And it's like, okay. But
yeah, I mean, it's all a money thing too, you know, like I said, America does things differently, but let's say in Europe, if they have a kid who's 16, 17 is showing some progression while they're training in the environment that like, okay, this kid can maybe offer something in like a year or two, they sign them, allow them to develop and train. Maybe they play a few games in the professional environment, and whether they can make it or not, like they're either going to impact the team or maybe that team can sell them to another team and make a profit. You know, if you can sign this kid, let's say for free, and pay a small amount of wages for a couple of years, but you sell that kid off for 20 million pounds or 20 million euros, like, is that investment worth it for those 2-3 years? I would say so, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. Did you consider college outside the US just because the US isn't as focused on soccer as a sport?
I did briefly, but I didn't take that too seriously because honestly, I wasn't really sure. I also wasn't like emotionally mature enough at the time. I wasn't like life developed enough.
Yeah.
And so like I really wasn't in control of those decisions. Like for me, I kind of just was thinking that I was gonna play pro like regardless. So I was not thinking of college in any capacity until, you know, my dad, not me, but my dad asked a couple questions. It was kind of like a decision, like an overall decision made that like, okay, I guess college is the next step. So let's do that. I had a lot of experience up until that point. So college was not even a thought. It was like a delayed thought. I really was thinking like, okay, I'm going to play pro, whether it's DC United, whether it's I'm going to go to Europe. I had an opportunity to maybe go to Argentina, but I was never sent. My dad didn't send me over there. But you know what I mean? Like I had motion already around me that is where I was going. And so when that didn't happen and college came up, I was not thinking college at all. I just kind of chose the school that gave me the most money and kind of called it a day.
You said like your college team was competing, but not that great. Like, and you said you maybe wouldn't do college again. Do you feel like that kind of set you behind a little bit with your college or professional soccer career?
In terms of athletics, absolutely. I was kind of viewed on the outside. So guys from bigger colleges, even if DC United didn't have a history of them, they would still bring them in or choose them over me. And so like every school year, I would go back to the summer and play for DC United's U23 team. But every single year I would have to try out. And a lot of the guys from the bigger schools didn't have to. Some guys were already pre-chosen. But I had to, even though I had history of them, I had to try out every single year, and I had to battle it out every single year in order to make the squad. Start. It would always take me a month to not only like convince the coaches, but I also had to adapt to the speed again, because I was playing at that college level, which was slower, a little bit more lax, not at the level that I needed to be. And I would come in and jump with guys at the bigger school who train at that level all the time, all year. And so it took me about a month and a half to catch up, to like get in this ball of rolling and speed and all that stuff.
Right.
And then I would train really well and play really well for the 2 months that's left. And I'd go back to school, and then my level would be here when the school level was down here. And then throughout the year, I would drop back down to here. And so it was a lot of like up and down.
It sounds like your dad was kind of helping you throughout your, like, what kind of role did he play with your development?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say he had a good piece, but also I would probably use the word negative piece too. Because he was as my childhood, he was one of those dads was really tough on me, would yell and that type of stuff that you kind of see sometimes with parents and child. My dad was pretty heavy handed on that level. And so as a child, I kind of went through that. When I moved to Florida and he wasn't a part of that, my development kind of went. And so when I moved back to Florida, or when I moved back to Virginia with him, I was already at that level. So there was nothing he could say to me anymore. Like I had already kind of outdeveloped his knowledge or whatever he could give me. So there was no more of that. But then there was like there's always been some friction. Me and my dad don't have a good relationship. So,
okay.
So it's just kind of like, unfortunate. That's kind of how it blended together. But yeah, during that time, he was searching and he did do his part. He's a little bit safe. There was always like, what's the better chance that he could do something? It wasn't like, let's just take a chance. You know what I mean? So like I had an opportunity to go to Argentina. I would have been by myself. The team would have taken care of me. Like there were some details maybe that needed to be ironed out, but my dad didn't want to send me over there because of maybe unsafeness or whatever. The option was to go to college, but there was another option as well to not go, stay playing with the U18 DC United team, because I did really well that year. And I could have stayed with them and possibly like started training with the pro team, maybe even signed a contract. My trajectory could have went and started a whole new career. But we decided to go to the college, you know what I mean? So like, that was like, there's a lot of safe actions, which can be good and could also be negative too. And I also wasn't at the maturity stage to where I was able to make decisions on my own.
Right.
I wasn't really mindful of what I was doing. My parents were pretty guarded and again, safe. And so like, I had to really learn adult stuff by myself. My parents didn't like learn stuff, you know what I mean? Like a lot of stuff was kind of like, let's grab your hand and let's pull you through it, instead of me like learning and talking and trying to like I didn't grow up, I had to grow up on my own.
Yeah.
So he was a big piece. He was a piece.
A piece. Just you talked about the loneliness in Florida. Like, can you touch on like what it's like to have your job be to kind of eat, breathe, and sleep soccer? Like, and then did you do stuff to maintain balance?
I didn't. I mean, for me, it was easy. For me, I loved it. There was no like hard. I didn't wake up and was like, I don't want to do something today. Like there was never not one day throughout my career, no matter how small it was, or even as a child when I was in Florida, like there was not one day when I made the decision, like I love this, I want to do this, like it was go time. So like I always woke up, I always did my training early before the sun came up sometimes. I would do my fitness at night. I would train and do fitness like almost every day. Sometimes if I'm feeling on like the emptiness of my legs and my body, I wouldn't do fitness, but I'd always touch a ball every single day. Even throughout, like always as part of my training and always part of being ready. I loved it. There was not a day where I struggled with it. Like this is what I wanted to do. So I put in the work to do it.
Were there any aspects you didn't like or downsides?
One thing sometimes that gets to me sometimes is, when I moved back to Virginia and played during like the DC United Academy and stuff, I had to say no a lot to my best friends.
Mhm.
And that can make it lonely. At that age, what kids are into, like whether it's, they're finding themselves. There could be drinking involved, there can be smoking involved, there could be just other things that guys are going through, and my best friends were no different. So there's a lot of things I had to say no to, which sometimes can be tough to think about, but I have zero regrets. Like that's something that can hold some kids back, or some athletes back, is like how dedicated somebody needs to be in order to do this.
Right.
Like there is no debate, there is no balance, not so much. Like it's either you want it or you don't, and there's going to be someone out there that's going to be just as fit and just as whatever as another person. Like what's the deciding factor? Like there's going to be a deciding factor. Like you have to choose what it's going to be for you. Once I made the decision, that was it. I mean, I had no problem saying no. Sometimes I'd even go hang out with my friends and they'd be doing that stuff, and I would just say no. Like I just can't. I have to get up and train in the morning. Like I'm just not going to. And that was okay. Like I never succumbed to any peer pressure. Like there was none of that. Sometimes, yeah, you want to join in and you want to have fun with your friends just like any kid would. And so those are some of the stuff that can be a little tough. As I got older and I met my wife, some decisions I would have to be like, I just can't sometimes. Like I just can't, babe, I'm sorry. I have to get up and train in the morning, or maybe we can do this, but it's going to have to wait because I have to do some fitness and stuff. Making those decisions can be tough.
Can you kind of go through like meeting your wife, and then like how did she kind of handle the you being a pro athlete life?
Well, she actually helped me. A big part of why I was able to do what I do was her. After college and after I was doing the tryouts and stuff, I actually stopped playing soccer. I stopped and I became a wellness coach. And then I met my wife. I actually met her at a grocery store, and we talked, we hung out. It was great. And then we had our own ups and downs, just like a relationship can. The dreams topic came up. That's when kind of soccer started circling back into my thought. So I started training. I started like, practicing, trying to get the droid back, trying to get fit again. There's some teams in that area that will pay you to play certain games. And so I would kind of like contact those teams, and then I would play like a game or two every now and again. So I get like $100 here, $60 here to just play a game, which was cool. And then I got an opportunity to go to Australia to go play. Around that time, me and my wife weren't doing too well at the time, but we got through it because we're strong people. I asked her to come with me. There was no way I was going to do it without her. We left and we had a great year in Australia, and it was cool,
For sure.
And she loves it, or she did love it. Afterwards she didn't want to follow me anymore. My next plan after Australia was to go to Denmark, and she was kind of over the traveling part, so we were going to have to deal with that. But nonetheless, the trip to Australia did a lot for both of us, so it was really good.
Can we go into like just with like the life of a pro soccer player? Like what is the year and the season look like? And that means like training, travel, playing, like how much practice and training is in a normal week, all that kind of stuff.
In Australia, it was a little different. The training was a little bit toned back a little bit. So I had to do a lot of my training on my own. It was a little tough in Australia, probably not what I expected. But when I was playing for DC, we would train about 4 times a week, 4 or 5 times a week. Games would be on the weekends, 1 game, sometimes 2 games, depending on what year I was within the academy. In Australia, it was just a game every week. At the beginning of the week, it kind of depends on the schedule, because depending on what the game it is. And so like you play a game, you do recovery the next day. And then that second day after the game is when you kind of like open up the legs a little bit more. You touch the ball, you train. Sometimes you just train like normal. There's times where that second day I just train like normal. The middle of the week would be hard training sessions. You train hard when you can, just to get the level, get the experience, get accustomed to your teammates and stuff. Like you're always doing that all year round. The players around you are also developing too, and you have to know, you have a split second to make decisions on the field. So you have to know what people are doing. And
Right.
So the only way to do that is to put yourself in situations, so whenever you could train hard, that's when we would train hard as a team. The last day before a game, we would work on some tactic stuff, whether it's set pieces stuff or kind of shape within the team stuff. And then the game day, every player has their own routine for the game. I had my own routine for the game. I was pretty superstitious. So whenever I did something and I played really well, I do that identical thing every single time. It kind of depends on whether, during the season you have 1 game, 2 games, but that structure within however many days you have in between games is always the same. It's either shorter or longer.
Can you walk me through your pregame ritual, or is there stuff that a lot of guys would do?
No, everybody was different. I mean, I would, this has changed. It changed quite a bit the older I got. I didn't know much about nutrition. Like nobody told me, hey, nutrition is important. My nutrition, I wasn't pretty mindful of it in the academy days. My nutrition was terrible. My pregame, for some reason, I got into this superstition, but I would eat early in the morning. I would go and eat early in the morning, whether it's like cereal or an omelet or whatever. Like it didn't actually matter. And then I wouldn't eat all day. I would only drink water and electrolytes all day until the game. I would maybe eat a fruit or something, maybe to get me through, and I'd play the game, and then I'd eat terrible after the game. So the superstition that was like my college superstition. When I got older and I was playing in Australia and I refined my nutrition, I was way more knowledgeable, way more fitter once you refine that piece of it. But I would space my meal out pretty far out from the game because I liked being a bit lighter.
Yeah.
And a little bit bouncier on my feet. I would eat and have my supplement, make sure my nutrition is on point. That would be kind of my superstition, like big time was more the nutrition part of it than anything else.
That just brings up a memory of like, there was a kid on my soccer team and these are athletic kids that would eat like a freaking Snickers bar before the game.
Yeah.
Like, what are you?
Yeah. Yeah, it was terrible. I mean, I have so many memories of eating absolutely awful. But somebody's got to tell you that. Somebody's got to show you.
I read it in Scott Adams' book. He's the Dilbert guy, but I don't know why we're not taught, like, you got to pay attention to how you feel after you eat stuff, because it's like, oh.
Yep, so true. Yeah, so true.
So we covered diets. Let's talk a little bit about like the mental aspects of the game. So like, did you do any sports psychology stuff?
I did in my later years. I was told and I saw the value in it. I think when I needed it the most was probably when I moved from Florida to Virginia that first year, because I had a terrible coach. Even though he was the coach of the U16 DC United, he was a terrible coach. He didn't give me the light of day. I mean, it was something that I've never experienced before, ever. I fought through it. I managed it. I won him over. Like I did a lot of things throughout that year, but that was a really, really tough part. That was a really tough, like 5-6 months. That could be the variable between, somebody who excels or kind of quits. That could be the separator sometimes. I had met like a personal development mentor kind of around when I started wellness coaching and stuff. And he showed me a lot. He taught me a lot. And I apply that with soccer that I was still doing. It changed the way I felt. It changed how I viewed things. It did a lot for me. But even in my everyday life, like the personal development aspect is something that, you know, is so hugely important for everybody, but
For
for
sure.
sure athletes.
I got into personal development as well, a little bit after I got into MMA, and that just was so crucial for me for developing like self-confidence and social skills and stuff. What you were saying about a bad coach, like in John T. Reed's book about coaching baseball, he talks about in the introduction, like there's so many bad coaches, and the first thing you need to do is do no harm. Like, and that means with crappy technique or emotional abuse from yelling or, you know, whatever. Can you say, and he's talking about coaching kids baseball, but still, it's like, can you say that you've like definitively improved a kid in their baseball skills by the end of the season? And it's like a lot of times it's like not really. So
It's questionable. Yeah, it could be questionable. Yeah. There is a difference between probably the rest of the world and America. There just is. It's noticeable within soccer. And maybe now it's a little bit different now that I've been a few years out of it. But back then, like, there was a lot of bad coaches. Not everybody could coach. But in the rest of the world, like, you have to earn being able to coach like a U16s Manchester United, like the biggest club in the world. Like, you have to earn that. You start somewhere. And if you're not cutting it, like, you're not going to be a coach. It's just as cutthroat as being an athlete is being a coach. And if you're not improving players, they will cut you. They will replace you. That ideology is not here. And so there is, like, anybody can be a coach, which is like, for example, like DC United, like even a place like that, like you could have some credentials and you could be there. The importance of coaching is, I don't think is here yet. Again, that could have changed, but when I was around that age, it was not here. I can tell you that.
this is me talking out of my butt a little bit, but it seems like for I'll stereotype with like college level and professional level other sports like football and basketball and whatever. It seems like they focus a lot more on just winning, period, instead of like development and toxicity and all that.
I would say so. I guess that could be a separator in values, right? I mean, if you're taking like U16 level at a team here, let's say I played for DC United U16, so let's just use that as an example. Yeah. That coach, and then you take a Manchester United U16 coach. What's the values? Like, the DC United coach will probably want to win. And then the values of the Manchester United, like, the goal is to develop for the pro team so you can do that trajectory that I was explaining earlier, the 16, right, 17, 18, so they can be ready, so they can play in front of millions of people. Like, that is the trajectory. That's the goal. Could I feel that goal at DC United? Like, I don't think so. They didn't have, not even me, but they didn't have any of us play with the pro team too often. There was no like trying to see if we could fit in, not fit in, see if we're sociable. Like, a lot of those skills are necessary. Like, do you even work well with the players that they have at the pro team? Like, there was none of that. You know, the value system was different. Again, I don't know if it's changed any now, right, but when I was at that age, no, the value system was not, let's prepare kids for the pro team. No, it was not that, for sure. I mean, that's what sucks, right? I mean, like, not even in soccer, but America, like, America feels that they're the best at everything. In a lot of things, it could be fair, but with soccer is not an American sport. It is a global sport. That is something that America would never be good in until they give up their own values and choose the rest of the world's values. Until we release the ego and join the rest of the world, we're never gonna exceed in that part.
And this might have been a while ago, but wasn't the US women's team good?
They're always good. They're amazing. They're like one of the best in the world. The stuff that I'm talking about, like, the women deserve so much more, for sure. Like, the girls soccer, like even kids and stuff, they deserve so much more, because the men's, the kids get all, the boys get all the stuff, but that men's national team, like they suck. It
Yeah.
just, it is what it is. I'm not saying that they're bad players or anything. Like they're clearly at the
Yeah,
level that they should be,
yeah.
but they suck compared to the rest of the world.
And then it also reminds me of like Ronda Rousey when she was on the US judo team. The other countries had a lot more investment in that sport and that team because they had good facilities. They had athletic trainers for each athlete, plus coaches and coolers with ice and whatever. And I can't remember the exact line, but it's like she is like, you know what? I'm going to kick you and your coolers, but it doesn't matter if our team doesn't have squat support from
Yeah.
the country. So that's what
Yeah,
that's
of
making me
course.
think of. Let's talk a little bit about like advice for, let's say we've got like an aspiring athlete watching. What separates a player who goes pro from just another athlete?
I would say it's a decision. It really is a decision. Like you cannot halfway do it. You just cannot. The being an athlete from a soccer perspective, you have to make a decision to just do it. And you have to do what's necessary in order for you to get better to do it. If you don't, you will not make it. You just won't. It's literally as simple as that. There's too many players, not only in soccer, I mean, you could say with other sports too, I would imagine, but for soccer, there's too many players. There's too many players doing the work, whether it's physical work, skill work. Like there's just too many players, too many eyes watching. If you don't do the work to try and paint yourself in a good light, in the good picture, like it's not going to happen. It's just not.
Is it a life you'd recommend shooting for?
Yeah, if you're not dedicated, like if there's an ounce of you that's like, maybe not. If you find yourself waking up too many times and you're like, maybe a day off or something, it's not for you.
Mm-hmm.
It is not. I can tell you that. There's like, even in college, like even at a D1, like I would say a mid-level D1 college school, like there was a lot, like my class kind of stayed together. I think 10, 11 guys went in and only 2 guys dropped out. Only 2, but 2 guys dropped out. The next class, when I was a sophomore, that freshman class, I think another 10, 11 guys showed up. Only 2 stayed. So if they are having that standard, like you can imagine the big higher level D1 schools are, doing the same, if not more, and pro levels doing, it's a whole different level. If you're not ready for that, like it's not for you. And it's just the reality of what sports is. It's kind of sold like a dream. You're going to live this, you're going to live that. Like we only see what we see on TV, and those guys, yes, are doing really well, are now making good money. But about 90% of athletes, not just soccer, but all athletes, are experiencing a whole different life and a whole different struggle that people do not see and people can't relate to. And that's where the mental aspect comes in, the mental health aspect and the psychology and all that stuff plays such a big part because, I went through my own roadblocks in terms of mental health after I had to stop playing. And it is not easy, man. It is really, really tough. And so,
Yeah.
and I believe I'm a pretty mentally strong person. So if it was tough for me, I believe it's tough for a lot of people. If there's any sort of doubt, if you're not feeling it, it's not for you.
Yeah. And I'll add, it's very important to find the right coach and team that have the right approach and high level competition mindset. I dropped out of my college team because there was a lot of drinking and stuff. And it's like, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah, I've experienced something similar too. Having the right coach is such, and that's a variable that's out of an athlete's control. It was out of my control. Could I have made different decisions? Like, I'd say probably a big decision, even though I got to play for DC United's Academy, probably a better decision would have been to stay in Florida because of how well I was doing. The style of play fit me more, so I would have gotten looked at bigger schools, and the whole trajectory would have been different. Maybe the next decision, maybe I don't go to college, maybe I stay another year or two at DC United, and the trajectory could have been a whole different thing. How do you know it's the right decision? I mean, you don't. I mean, you really are just taking the chance. But you have to make a decision to do the work to even get to make the decision. That's really what you're working towards. You're working towards to have a decision on what you can and cannot do.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you're not getting the decision. You are getting nothing.
Can you touch on advice for people who want to get better at soccer and it could apply to their sport in general, but like, and that could mean like basic skills, field awareness, flow of the game, working with the team, that kind of stuff.
I would say in terms of learning the game, I would say, because sometimes when you're a kid and you do tactical stuff and you're doing team stuff, that could get boring. And I would say for any kid or whatever that's going through that stuff, don't ignore it. Pay attention to it, especially if the coach knows what he's talking about. And I don't know if a kid would know that or not. I mean, for me, I had a former US men's national team player coach. Like, he was doing tactical stuff, so I was listening. There was not a debate. Like, I was listening. I used to also, not really my favorite players, but the players I thought fit my game the most, who was
Right.
playing professionally at the highest level possible. I would watch individual videos of them. It wasn't always my favorite player. Eventually they were my favorite players, but I would watch them over and over and over to model my game just like them, because they are where they're at for a reason. And if your game models somebody similar to that person, you need to do that. And that's how I learned the game. And watch more soccer. Look, watch, and learn. Don't just watch for fun.
Yeah.
Like, you really have to pay attention.
Actively watching it. Yeah.
Actively, like very actively. I mean, you really just have to take a look at your deficiencies. And so, like, if you're not fit enough, you need to get fit. If you're feeling like you're not strong enough, if you're getting pushed off maybe too much, you need to work on some stability core stuff. You need to probably get a little bit stronger. Maybe it's not recommended for kids to lift weights, but you can do some push-ups. I've never seen nobody say, hey, you can't do any push-ups. Like, you can do push-ups, I promise.
Yeah.
And skill work, like, you should be touching a ball every single day. Like, no matter if you can't get to an actual field to like work on some first touch, dribbling, that type of stuff, like, you should be juggling the ball. You should be doing whatever you can to touch a soccer ball, because at the highest level, those guys are not thinking about, hey, is my first touch going to be good? Or, hey, I'm going to take touches here. Like, it is automatic. They know that their touches are going to be good. They know, like, fitness is not you're not watching on TV and saying, hey, that guy may not be fit. Or like, hey, that guy doesn't look like he can control the ball. All of those guys can do the basics and control the ball. So if you can't do that to where you are not thinking about it, you need to work on that and do that to where it is like not even a thought, it is natural. And you just got to find a way. I mean, when I was in Florida, when it was nighttime, like, my mom used to let me go out at night to go run. So I used to run around our complex all the time at night until like midnight. And I would get a soccer ball and dribble the sidewalk. There was no field by me, but that's as best as I could do. So you have to find a way. If you want it, you will find a way.
Yeah, one of my quotes I really like, I don't know where it's from, but it's like, a man who wants something finds a way, a man who doesn't finds an excuse.
That's it. That's like, that is it. And it's clear. It is clear. And the older you get, the more clear it is.
So I think that's a good way to wrap it up. If people want, we can probably talk again about a more specific soccer training regiment, and that could be more an in-person video showing some stuff. But anyway,
yeah, sure.
Well, thanks for being on the show.
I hope people enjoy it. If people have questions, like, holler at me. I'm free.
Yeah. Yeah. Dario and I know each other, so I can always send him a message and get your questions answered. So
that's it. I'm open. Thank you for everybody who listens. Appreciate y'all.